Ready to tackle this?
Yes, sir.
Well, good morning, everyone. Let's call this meeting to order. Mr. Troman, has anyone signed up for public comment?
We do have one person who will address the commission on item number 9 policy when we get there. With that, we are good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Miller.
Good morning, sir.
How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Let's start this by tackling agenda item 3, but we have no cases to reconsider under agenda item 3. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Well, then we'll move to agenda item 4, consider tax liability cases. And I do believe we have one tax case on docket 44.
Yes, sir. It's case number TD-20-095-0920. Commissioner Demerson?
Staff recommendation.
We're getting some interference. Someone named Wood, STE2, could you mute, please?
All right, there. They just muted.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Demerson, I have your vote as you accepted staff recommendation.
That's correct, Chair.
Commissioner Alvarez?
Ms. Miller, I agree with staff's recommendation.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman?
Agree with staff recommendation.
Thank you. That's it for agenda item 4.
Well, let's move to agenda item 5, but we have no cases under agenda item 5. Is that correct?
None pulled for additional discussion, but I did send you the short form dissent list a moment ago.
Nothing on 5. So on agenda item 6, we have no wage claim cases pulled for additional discussion. Perhaps send us the short form list on number 6.
Yes, sir. Thank
We
you.
accept staff recommendations on the remaining wage claim cases on docket 44.
I second the motion except for those cases on which I'm dissenting, as reflected on the wage claim short form dissent list for docket 44.
Yeah, I concur with the chairman's motion, except for the cases on which I'm dissenting. Wage claim short form dissent list for docket 44.
Motion passes with the exceptions noted.
Thank you.
All right, let's move to agenda item 7, consideration of unemployment cases on docket 44. Please proceed when you are ready.
Yes, sir.
Case number 2493243, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision is not supportable. The claimant did not receive the AT decision. The claimant provided testimony regarding his household mailing routine to rebut the presumption of receipt. The claimant did not know how to file a petition to reopen because he did not receive the instructions with the decision. The claimant was unable to speak with someone regarding instructions despite calling 30 to 40 times. Normal avenues for obtaining assistance, such as the local workforce office, were unavailable due to the pandemic. The claimant's petition to reopen should be deemed timely and resubmit.
The claimant's petition was late, and we do not have jurisdiction to consider the underlying merits of this case. We should affirm the AT decision. The claimant filed a late Rule 16 petition to reopen, untimely claimant appeal, earnings adjustment overpayment of $507, misconduct overpayment of $7,605.
Affirm the AT, untimely petition to reopen. The AT1 decision remains in full force and effect.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2506028, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be modified. The claimant was living and working in Fort Worth while his wife was living in the Rio Grande Valley. His wife's diabetes was getting worse, which made it more difficult for her to support their daughter who has a disability. Therefore, the claimant quit to move with his spouse. As such, the claimant should only be disqualified for 6 weeks and the employer's account protected from charge. Modify the AT, spousal leaving 6 weeks disqualification and no chargeback.
The AT decision should be affirmed. The claimant quit for personal reasons. There is insufficient evidence to warrant applying any of the exceptions to this disqualification under section 207.045 of the Act to this case. We should affirm the AT decision, voluntary leaving, no chargeback.
Modify the AT, quit to move with spouse, 6-week disqualification, no chargeback.
Short form.
I have your short form dissent, Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
Case number 2508924, Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT decision is not supportable. Only the claimant appeared for the AT hearing in this case. The claimant provided uncontradicted testimony that the employer's business had declined. and that the employer had a practice of calling him to come into work only to then not give him any work. The claimant provided credible testimony that on the last incident, he called multiple employees as was the accepted practice, and was told that the employer had no work for him. He was involuntarily laid off and therefore should not be disqualified under section 207.044 of the Act. Reverse the AT no misconduct chargeback. If my fellow commissioners do not agree that the evidence supports this conclusion, I would ask for a rehearing in this case. The record in this case was not well developed. The hearing officer did not clarify when the claimant last worked before the incident of 2/26/20. Given that the claimant contends that the employer had a decline in business, development of this aspect of the case could materially change the outcome. I would therefore ask for a rehearing to more fully develop the record.
The AT decision should be affirmed. The claimant's testimony was uncertain as to whether he contacted his supervisor to report his absence on the date of the final incident. Since the claimant did not persuasively deny being absent without proper notice to the employer, we should affirm the AT decision, misconduct, no chargeback.
Reverse the AT, no misconduct chargeback.
That form?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
Case number 2511631, Commissioner Demerson.
The AT decision should be affirmed. Regarding good cause, the claimant's misreading of the hearing notice does not constitute good cause for his non-appearance. As to the timeliness issue, the claimant's deadline to appeal was on March 23rd, 2020, but the earliest appeal the claimant filed occurred on April 5th, 2020, and is therefore late. The claimant did not allege that any technical difficulties with the TWC system contributed to his late appeal. Rather, it appears that the determination was sent to the claimant's UBS inbox, but he did not open it until long after the deadline had passed. Since there is no good cause exception to the timeliness rules, the claimant's appeal is late, and we do not have jurisdiction to consider the underlying merits of this case. Accordingly, we should affirm the AT decision. The claimant did not establish good cause for his non-appearance, untimely claimant appeal, voluntary leaving, no chargeback.
The decision should be modified. I agree that the claimant did not have good cause for missing the first appeal tribunal hearing. However, as part of the appeal period fell within the time frame that TWC was experiencing issues with UBS and other services, the claimant's appeal should be deemed timely. As such, the documents available to the first appeal tribunal are available for review. Those documents show that the claimant quit working for the employer because they had failed to pay him for all the hours he worked. The claimant states he brought the matter to the employer's attention and was told he would fix it, but they ignored it. The employer failed to address the claimant's allegations. The claimant had good cause connected with the work for quitting. Modify the AT, no good cause, timely appeal, no voluntary leaving, chargeback.
From the AT, claimant did not establish good cause for AT1, untimely claimant appeal, voluntary leaving, no chargeback.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2530819, Commissioner Alvarez.
The case should be remanded. The claimant requested an interpreter for the hearing. However, one was not provided. While the claimant chose to proceed with the hearing, the lack of an interpreter presents a due process issue. Similar to case 2581640 on docket 42, in which we remanded a case when an employer was not provided an interpreter, we should remand this case in order to allow the claimant to provide testimony with the aid of an interpreter. Remand at the AT.
The AT decision should be affirmed. The claimant did not establish that his working conditions were intolerable or unsafe. Furthermore, the claimant did not seek to avail himself of the protective measures provided. As such, he quit without working good cause, and we should affirm the AT decision, voluntary leaving.
From the AT, voluntary leaving.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Alvarez, I have your dissent.
Case number 2559672, Commissioner Demerson.
The AT decision should be modified. I agree that the chargeback ruling should be voided. As to the job separation, the claimant failed to establish that his working conditions were intolerable or that he had good cause to quit his job. While the claimant's work vehicle was out of service, the employer offered two alternative vehicles that the claimant could have used to perform his job duties. There's no indication that the employer promised the claimant use of a specific vehicle as a part of his job. And the evidence is insufficient to show that the substitute vehicles were insufficient. The employer has the authority to determine what vehicles are appropriate for its employees to do the work. Since the evidence supports that the employer offered adequate alternatives for the claimant to drive and perform his job, his resignation was without work-connected good cause. We should modify the AT decision, voluntary leaving, void chargeback ruling. In the alternative, I would agree to rehear the case to develop the record on the final incident and why the claimant rejected the alternative vehicles for the employer offered him, including the pickup truck with the attached trailer and the other hauling truck.
The decision should be affirmed. The claimant quit after the vehicle necessary for him to perform his regular job duties broke down, and the employer failed to get it repaired for over a month. The claimant provided the employer with a reasonable amount of time to remedy this issue, which they failed to do. Affirm the AT, no voluntary leaving, and void chargeback.
Affirm the AT, no voluntary leaving, void chargeback.
Short form.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
Case number 2568947, Commissioner Demerson.
The AT decision is basically supportable. So the hearing officer should have followed up with a memo to tax to investigate whether the claimant's limited liability company became a liable employer and whether it should have reported the claimant's wages to the Texas Workforce Commission. It is clear that the claimant was an employee and that he earned wages that should count as base period wages for an unemployment claim. However, under longstanding TWC Tax Department rules, a member of an LLC who performs services for compensation from the LLC is an employee of the LLC. And the LLC should report wages paid to the member and pay appropriate unemployment tax. We've applied that procedure in hundreds of Rule 13 tax appeals and should not have any exceptions for LLC members who file unemployment claims. Such members should be able to file unemployment claims, but their LLCs need to be involved as their employers, either as a last employing unit or as a base period employer. I am in favor of granting wage credits to the claimant in this case, but the wage credit should be from his LLC, which should be liable as a base period employer. To do otherwise would be to have one rule for this claimant and another rule for the hundreds of other LLC members whose cases have come before the commission in prior Rule 13 cases. To guard the due process rights of the claimant, his LLC, and the company that contracted with the LLC, we should rehear this case to obtain testimony from the tax department concerning whether and how Tax Law Manual Section 1.5.3 should apply in this case.
The decision is not supportable. The parties largely agreed regarding the direction and control the employer exercised. The claimant received training from the employer, worked a set schedule in the employer's office, was paid hourly, provided reports, reimbursed for expenses, was not allowed to delegate, provided with a company email and business cards, and provided with tools. Although the employer made payments to the LLC owned by the claimant for the work performed, no evidence has been presented to establish the employer contracted with the LLC. As significant evidence has been presented to establish direction and control, and insufficient evidence has been presented to establish the employer contracted with the LLC, the claimant should be awarded wage credits in the amount of $70,928.63 in the second quarter of 2019.
I concur with Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you. We will rehear the case.
Case number 2574697, Commissioner Alvarez.
The claimant returned to work and worked her customary hours between May 3rd and May 26th. Regarding the timeliness issue, the claimant signed up for electronic correspondence, but she is not computer savvy and doesn't own a computer. Therefore, she called TWC many times. TWC representatives told the claimant to be patient, to stop calling, or they would tell her that they were not trained to answer her questions. Many claimants are not sophisticated and do not understand the numerous ways that the agency can say yes or no to whether they are going to receive benefits. Therefore, TWC has an obligation to be available to answer questions. As the claimant was given misinformation regarding her appeal rights, we should deem the claimant's appeal timely and resubmit for merits on the severance issue. Modify the AT customary full-time ineligible May 3rd through May 26, 2020, timely claimant appeal and resubmit.
The appeal tribunal decision should be affirmed. The claimant's appeal is late. There are no good cause exceptions to the timeliness rules. The claimant's appeal should therefore be dismissed and the underlying severance disqualification should remain in full force and effect. Regarding customary full-time hours, the claimant acknowledged that she worked her regular full-time hours for the time periods in question. As such, we should affirm the AT decision, untimely claimant appeal, leave the underlying severance disqualification in full force and effect. Customary full-time hours not eligible from May 3rd, 2020 through May 9th, 2020, and from May 10th, 2020 through May 16th, 2020.
Modify the AT, customary full-time hours ineligible May 3rd, 2020 through May 9th, 2020, and May 10, 2020 through May 16, 2020. Timely claimant appeal, resubmit on the severance issue.
Thank you. We will resubmit on the severance issue.
Case number 2575953, Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. I agree that the claimant filed a valid claim. As to the job separation, the AT properly applied the home health precedent to this case and concluded that the working relationship ended when the claimant refused further work because it was a one-day assignment during a previously scheduled doctor's appointment. Since the claimant declined further work due to a previously scheduled doctor's appointment, she should continue to be qualified for benefits, but the employer's account should be protected from charge under medical separation analysis. We should therefore modify the AT decision, valid claim, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback, MVI.
The decision is correct. The claimant's last assignment ended on April 7, 2020, and when her client went out of town, the claimant reported for additional work. She was offered a one-day assignment which she could not accept due to a previously scheduled medical appointment. The employer did not offer the claimant any additional work until April 21st, 2020, after she had filed her initial claim. Affirm the AT valid claim, no voluntary leaving, chargeback.
I concur with Commissioner Demerson, but I'd like to add a memo to UIO and CS to investigate whether claimant refused suitable work.
I'm okay with that.
All right, Commissioner Alvarez?
I would also agree with the Commissioner Demerson.
Okay, we have a unanimous decision on the merits plus a memo to UIO and CS to investigate possible refusal of suitable work.
Case number 2578488, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be reversed. The employer bought out the claimant's portfolio. The claimant was earning commission only, and the buyout caused the claimant take-home pay to go from $6,000 to $500, a reduction of over 90%. The claimant did not work for 6 months under these conditions, as the AT decision stated. The claimant worked for 2 months to see how the buyout would affect her pay, which was appropriate action to take under commission precedent. The more than 90% reduction in the claimant's pay provided her good cause connected with the work for quitting. Reverse the AT, no voluntary leaving, no overpayment, void chargeback ruling. In the alternative, the case should be reheard to obtain more complete evidence regarding the reduction in pay.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. I agree the chargeback ruling should be voided. As to the job separation, the claimant quit due to dissatisfaction with her working arrangement. The claimant alleged that there was a change to her contract, which served as the tipping point that prompted her to resign. The parties were in dispute as to the language of the contract. However, since the claimant quit, it is on her to establish a preponderance of the evidence that she had good cause connected with the work for doing so. As the claimant stated, she did not have a copy of the contract. She was not able to meet her evidentiary burden regarding its contents given their disputed nature. Moreover, the claimant stated that she did not avail herself of some of the remedies the employer had to express her dissatisfaction, including a hotline and consulting with HR. Accordingly, the claimant did not allow the employer an adequate opportunity to address her concerns. Given the totality of the circumstances, the claimant did not establish work-connected good cause to quit. We therefore modify the AT decision, voluntary leaving, overpayment of $3,126, void the chargeback ruling.
I would vote to rehear for testimony and evidence for both versions of the contract.
Very well, we will rehear the case.
Case number 2579752, Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be affirmed. As we've seen recently, a party's appeal period being entirely in the window of time where TWC was experiencing technical difficulties processing claims by itself will not be an exception to the timeliness rules. In the case before us, the AT, who was in the best position to gauge the credibility of the parties, concluded that the claimant delayed filing his appeal because he wanted to obtain more information about his case. The latter is not an exception to the timeliness rules. As such, we should affirm the AT decision, untimely claimant appeal, leave the underlying AT decision in full force and effect.
The decision is not correct. The claimant testified he tried to file appeals to TWC but was unable to get through because of the system issues. The claimant's appeal period was during a time TWC was experiencing issues with UBS and other services. The claimant's appeal should be deemed timely, and as there was no merits testimony taken, the case should be remanded. Reverse the AT, timely appeal, and remand for merits.
Reverse the AT, timely claimant appeal, remand.
Short form, Chair.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
Case number 2580579, Commissioner Demerson.
The commission should grant a rehearing in this case. The employer testified that it did not receive the notice of the claimant's initial claim because the post office does not deliver mail to the employer's physical address. Further questioning is warranted about this issue. For instance, testimony should be gathered on whether the post office not delivering the mail to the employer was a post office issue or an employer issue. Furthermore, the employer stated that it did not become aware of the notice until April 20th, 2020, which was beyond the deadline to respond. The employer should be asked the ultimate question as to whether it received the initial claim at any of its addresses prior to the protest deadline of April 10th, 2020. Accordingly, we should grant a rehearing to address the questions previously stated.
A decision should be affirmed. Under sections 208.002 and 208.003, TWC is required to send notice of a claim to the location where the claimants last worked unless the employer has a designated claims address. The employer in this case did not designate a claims address until after the employer filed a late protest. As the notice was sent to the employer's correct address as required by statute, and as the employer did not file a protest until after the deadline, the employer's protest was late. Affirm the AT late employer protest.
Affirm the AT, untimely employer protest, no misconduct.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Demerson. I have your short form dissent.
Case number 2581058, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be affirmed. The claimant had been working from home for approximately a week when she was discharged. The claimant was still adapting to working from home with the changed computer setup and system issues. The employer's evidence, which notes problems on the single day, does not establish misconduct on the part of the claimant. Affirm the AT, no misconduct chargeback.
We should reverse the appeal tribunal decision. The employer's testimony and documentary evidence credibly established that the claimant reported having performed work on days when she had not done the work. The employer provided the claimant an opportunity to prove her allegations that she had worked on certain accounts, but the failed to produce satisfactory evidence corroborating her statements. By not accurately reporting her work, the claimant mismanaged her position of employment. Accordingly, we should reverse the AT decision, misconduct, no chargeback, adequate employer response.
From the AT, no misconduct, chargeback.
Short form.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
Case number 2582481, Commissioner Demerson.
The commission should grant a rehearing in this case. The claimant was aware that passing a welding test was a condition of his continued employment. However, it is unclear exactly what the claimant's duties were or to what extent he participated in the test that led to his discharge. As such, we should conduct a rehearing and ask the parties what duties a pipe welder helper performs and what role a pipe welder helper plays in the employer's test.
The decision is not supportable. The evidence establishes the claimant was discharged because the welder he was assisting failed to pass an inspection. The employer's decision not to offer the claimant further employment was not due to the claimant's action or inaction, but instead due to another employer's failure to pass inspection. The employer has not asserted the claimant performed inadequately. The other employee's failure does not constitute misconduct on the part of the claimant. Reverse the AT, no misconduct, no overpayment.
Concur with Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you. We will rehear the case.
Case number 2582878, Commissioner Demerson.
The appeal tribunal decision should be modified. I agree that the claimant filed a valid claim. As to the job separation, the claimant's final absence was due to illness. As such, the commission should find that the job separation was the result of the claimant's medically verifiable illness. Accordingly, the claimant should continue to be qualified for benefits and the employer's account should be protected under a medical separation analysis. Should therefore modify the AT decision, valid claim, no misconduct, no chargeback, MBI.
Ms. Miller, I'll agree with the Commissioner Demerson.
Yes, sir.
I concur with Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you. We have a unanimous decision.
Case number 2584311, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be modified. The claimant filed a valid claim regarding the job separation. At the time he quit, employees and customers were not required to wear masks. The employer had 200 to 300 customers coming in every day, and the claimant had to have face-to-face interactions with customers. The claimant lives with his elderly parents who have pre-existing conditions that put them at high risk for COVID-19. As such, the claimant had good cause to quit to protect the lives of his parents. However, the separation was caused by the pandemic, the employer's account should be protected from charge. Modify the AT, valid claim, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback due to the disaster, void adequate response.
We should modify the appeal tribunal decision. First, I agree the claimant filed a valid claim. As to the job separation, the claimant quit due to fear of contracting COVID-19. At the time the claimant quit, the employer was following the recommended health guidelines. Because there was still work available when the claimant quit and the employer was following the health guidelines in place at the time, the claimant quit for personal reasons and not for good cause connected with the work. We should modify the AT decision, valid claim, voluntary leaving, no chargeback, sever adequate response.
Modify the AT, valid claim, voluntary leaving, no chargeback, sever adequate response.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2589557, Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT decision should be reversed. The claimant left her job because her mother-in-law, who lived with the claimant, died from COVID-19, and her employer refused to allow her time off. Section 2102A3 of the CARES Act provides that an individual has a qualifying PUA work separation if a member of the individual's household has been diagnosed with COVID-19. The claimant stopped working for the employer as a result of her mother-in-law's illness and subsequent death from COVID-19. Her mother-in-law is a family member who lived with the claimant. The claimant's separation was therefore clearly qualifying under CARES Act. Reverse the AT, eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance, no overpayment.
The AT decision is supportable. The claimant stopped working for her last employing unit because her employer would not give her any bereavement leave for dealing with an unfortunate death in her family. she had filed a claim for PUA benefits. Section 2102 of the CARES Act is the provision that created the PUA program, and the claimant's reasons for leaving her job was not one of the reasons provided in that law for receiving such benefits. Accordingly, we should affirm the AT decision. The claimant is ineligible for PUA benefits, overpayment of $1,242.
Reverse the AT, claimant eligible for PUA benefits, no overpayment. Memo to UIO and CS to investigate availability to work.
Chair, I'm going to short form and also ask for, I'll go to short form. That's fine.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Demerson, I have your short form to send.
Thank you.
We'll reverse the case and send a memo to UIO NCS on possible availability.
Okay.
Case number, case number 2590427, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be modified. The employer was not requiring workers to wear masks. Masks greatly reduce the spread of coronavirus, and the claimant was correct that the work environment was unsafe because the workers were not wearing masks. The claimant was required to train someone who would not wear a mask and would not socially distance. The claimant established good cause connected with the work for quitting. Modify the AT, no voluntary leaving, no chargeback, disaster, void, adequate response.
The AT decision should be modified. The employer credibly testified that it was complying with the CDC guidelines. Furthermore, the claimant did not escalate his concerns to HR or to the president before resigning, even though he had several opportunities to do so. Since the claimant did not establish that his working conditions were intolerable or unsafe, and since he did not afford the employer an adequate opportunity to address his concerns, his resignation was without work-connected good cause. We should modify the AT decision, voluntary leaving, no chargeback, sever, adequate response.
Modify the AT, voluntary leaving, no chargeback, sever, adequate response.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2592450, Commissioner Alvarez.
The AT decision is not supportable. Appeal number 86-00326-10-121786 holds that an employee who accepts a separation or layoff package is nevertheless involuntarily separated if they are subject to a layoff even after refusing the package. In this case, the claimant was definitely going to be laid off and also would lose his employee benefits if he did not accept the package. He was therefore laid off due to the employer's financial difficulties. Reverse the AT, no misconduct.
We should affirm the appeal tribunal decision. The claimant initiated the job separation when he accepted to voluntarily stop working in exchange for an incentive package. If the claimant had not opted to receive the employer's benefit package, the claimant could have continued working full-time for many months. While the claimant's decision to choose the employer's package is understandable, it does not constitute good cause connected with the work for quitting. Accordingly, we should affirm the AT decision, voluntary leaving.
Affirm the AT, voluntary leaving.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2598346, Commissioner Demerson.
We should modify the appeal tribunal decision. First, I agree that the claim was valid. As to the job separation, the claimant worked for decades without problems until issues with his eyes began to interfere with the performance of his job duties. Thus, because the claimant's medical condition was a substantial factor in the job separation, the claimant should be qualified for benefits and the employer's account should be protected from charge under a medical separation analysis. Accordingly, we should modify the AT decision, no misconduct, no chargeback, MVI.
The decision should be affirmed. The claimant worked for the employer for over 22 years. The employer's witnesses provided vague testimony about the customer complaints and prior warnings, but there is no documentary evidence to support that vague testimony. The employer provided some vague hearsay regarding the last job the claimant worked on. The employer never actually identified what error the claimant was supposed to have made. The claimant testified that it was a large job, and he simply had not completed it when the employer sent another electrician to finish the work. The only thing that was clear from the employer's testimony was that the claimant has a disability and the employer no longer wanted to provide reasonable accommodations for that disability. The evidence is insufficient to establish misconduct connected with the work. Affirm the AT, valid claim, no misconduct, chargeback.
Modify the AT, valid claim, no misconduct, no chargeback, MVI.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2598434, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be modified. The claimant is at high risk due to age and a pre-existing condition to developing severe illness if she were to contact COVID-19. The claimant's reasons for leaving were urgent, compelling, and necessary. Modify the AT, valid claim, no disqualified, urgent, compelling, and necessary.
We should affirm the appeal tribunal decision. First, I agree that the claimant filed a valid claim. Regarding the job separation, the claimant quit out of fear of contracting COVID-19. However, the employer provided personal safety equipment, followed health and safety guidelines, and offered multiple alternatives to quitting in order to accommodate different employers. Because the claimant did not seek to avail herself of any of the employer's options before quitting, she quit without good cause connected with the work. Therefore, we should affirm the AT decision, valid claim, voluntary leaving.
Affirm the AT, valid claim, voluntary leaving.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Alvarez.
Case number 2602173, Commissioner Alvarez.
The decision should be reversed. The claimant was promised at least 40 hours per week when she was hired. The employer reduced her hours so that she was working less than 40 hours per week. The AT's assertion that the claimant worked under these conditions for 4 months is not accurate. The claimant complained to the employer about her hours, and the employer told her that they would give her more hours. The claimant worked under these conditions for less than 2 months, which included her notice period. The claimant gave the employer a reasonable amount of time to resolve the issue, and then she gave notice and worked out her 2 weeks' notice. The drastic reduction in hours provided the claimant good cause for her resignation. Reverse the AT, no voluntary leaving, chargeback.
We should affirm the appeal tribunal decision. The wage records established that the claimant worked under the new schedule for 3 months prior to quitting. Thus, because the claimant had accepted the new terms of employment by quitting to look for other work, the claimant quit without good cause connected with the work. We should affirm the AT decision, voluntary leaving, no chargeback.
Reverse the AT, no voluntary leaving, chargeback.
Short form dissent.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Demerson.
Thank you.
And that is the last pulled unemployment insurance case under agenda item 7. I did send the short form dissent list earlier in the meeting.
Move we accept staff recommendations on the remaining UI cases on docket 44.
I second the motion except for those cases in which I'm dissenting, as reflected on the UI short form dissent list for docket 44.
I concur with the chairman's motion except for the cases on which I'm dissenting as reflected in the UI short form dissent list for docket 44.
Motion passes with the exceptions noted.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of agenda items 3 through 7. Let's pause for a few moments to reset for the rest of the meeting.
back. All right.
Here we go with agenda item 8, discussion, consideration, possible action regarding the acceptance of pledges for board contract year 2020 and 2021 childcare matching funds.
Good morning, Chairman Daniel, Commissioners, Mr. Cerna. For the record, Travis Weaver, Workforce Development Division. Annually, local workforce development boards submit local match pledges to secure federal child care funds pursuant to Commission Rule 809-17. This will be a standing agenda item as boards may continue to submit match agreements through January 31st, 2021. Commissioners, a couple of comments prior to our request. Although our overall total is low at this time, it is not uncommon. Based on our submittal history, the majority of our pledges are submitted during November and December, which then are approved by the Commission in December and January. Boards have not notified the TWC of any issues securing BCY 21 match at this point. On today's agenda is Coastal Bend, Lower Rio, Texoma, and Central Texas. Of these boards, 3 have secured at least 50% of their target, and 1 board, Coastal Bend, has secured their local match target for BCY 21. Due to the increase in Coastal Bend's local match target from BCY 20 and other partners decreasing their pledge, the City of Corpus Christi and Texas A&M Kingsville increased their pledge from last year by $40,300 and $20,000 respectively. We appreciate these organizations supporting our local boards with their local match effort. Today, staff requests Commission acceptance of child care pledges for donations, transfers, and certifications of expense for BCY 21 in the amount of $1,194,182. Commissioners, this includes my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments or questions?
None here, Chairman, just like the word Texas A&M Kingsville.
Chairman, I like to commend Ken and his team for really getting after it. I think they're the first board at 100%. That's pretty cool. So I think they're taking bragging rights with some of the other boards, as I understand it. And I too, like Commissioner Alvarez, am excited that Texas A&M Kingsville is stepping up to the plate there. Thank you for the Travis.
You're welcome, sir.
Texas A&I keeps coming up in conversation every.
Yes, Chairman. Way to say A&I, Chairman. I love it.
He'll never get that alumni award.
A&I all the way, Chairman.
Are there any other comments or questions?
None here, Chairman.
None.
Do we have a motion on this issue?
I move that we accept child care match in the amount of $1,194,182 for board contract year 2021.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded, and we're unanimous on this issue.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This is agenda item 9, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding the establishment of an information technology registered apprenticeship expansion program.
Good morning, Chairman Daniel. How's my volume?
It's good for me.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, Chairman Daniel, Commissioners, and Mr. Cerna. For the record, Carrie Ballast, Workforce Development Division. Registered apprenticeship is a training model that can support employers in training new employees or upskilling existing employees. Employers who need to build or enhance their current workforce can choose to develop a new registered apprenticeship program or expand a current program. Current information from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics anticipates continued job growth in the field of information technology. Texas continues to focus on building a highly skilled and well-paid workforce.
Carrie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can barely hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay, how's that?
A little higher if you can go all the way.
A little bit more? How's that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. Texas continues to focus on building a highly skilled and well-paid workforce with IT occupations in demand and projections indicating that the demand will continue, making funds available to the IT industry to cover a portion of training costs will support and promote continued growth of Texas businesses. So with these demands and projections in mind, staff proposed that Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds, also known as WIOA, be used for an information technology registered apprenticeship expansion program. So for the decision point today, staff seek direction on publishing a request for applications for the Information Technology Registered Apprenticeship Expansion Program to award up to $4 million in WIOA funding. Eligible applicants will be workforce boards, institutions of higher education, and nonprofit organizations. Through this funding, the program will be positioned to train a minimum of 1,000 eligible participants in the IT field. That concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Before we move to comments and questions, Mr. Troman, would this be an appropriate time for a public commenter?
It would. We have Aurora Geis. Ms. Geis, if you'll unmute yourself and introduce your name and your affiliation for the record, and go ahead and proceed. You may need to unmute your microphone.
Is she on a cell phone or a call?
I think she may have
Good
just
morning.
There we are.
Yes, good morning. I'm on a cell phone. Thank you, Director Ed Cerna and Commissioners Alvarez and Demerson, as well as Commissioner Daniel. My name is Aurora Geis, and I'm currently the National Director of Strategic Relationships for Digital Creative Institute, now New Apprenticeship. And we are an organization that is advancing tech apprenticeships in Texas, great state of Texas. Thank you for your time and service to advance workforce in Texas. And I also am very grateful for your service during these unprecedented times, where I know your first priority is evident, and that's position our Texas workforce to be strong, skilled, and we all know that strengthens our economy. Your collaboration and your leadership and your responsiveness to discuss the launching of a pilot to expand apprenticeship into the IT sector is an innovative talent solution that will support the IT industry to grow stronger in Texas. My comments today are to generate awareness on the impact of apprenticeship and to encourage your support to adopt work-based learning to build competencies in our workforce talent by expanding tech apprenticeships in the state of Texas. We face many challenges with the workforce ecosystem, and an evergreen challenge is our talent-ready pipeline. The talent supply is seeing unprecedented challenges due to the pandemic, and the core issue is to be career-ready with relevant competencies and essential leadership skills. And on the talent demand side, employers' ideal hire is productive talent that is retained after a year or longer. So industries, I don't have to tell you, but I will mention that industries like the IT industry are in expansion mode, particularly in North Texas. Over 21 Fortune 500 companies and 90 additional major corporations headquartered in North Texas, with over 26,000 jobs that have been added. The impact of this is a company has to adopt a technological disruption to be relevant and competitive. And these new technologies require new skills. And key areas of growth in the past 3 years include all occupations in IT, to include cybersecurity, data management, data sciences, product development, and project management. As to how we need to address the current challenges of supply and demand of ready talent, we seek to build the skills gap. We do this with our pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs for the IT industry. So Digital Creative Institute, now New Apprenticeship, is a federally recognized national apprenticeship program through the Department of Labor, serving the IT industry. And we train entry-level talent whose careers are in transition and our military veterans in transition. We support work-based learning to build skill, competency, leadership in digital marketing, cybersecurity, and data analytics. And we've recently added our programs to serve high school graduates to obtain up to 24 college credits toward their degree while apprenticing as an IT generalist. This is our most recent occupation that we've added to our programming. We're committed to building leaders in the marketplace, and we've integrated performance coaching to our apprenticeship programs. And each apprentice works with their coach, with their manager every quarter to help them navigate their role in their work by developing KPIs to ensure the quality and engagement. They also receive weekly coaching to help them navigate challenges, and they're learning and monthly coaching on leadership topics, from managing conflict to managing relationships with your boss, your peers, and stakeholders. Why am I telling you this? Because these communication and leadership strategies have supported the success of 97% of our apprentices to be rated as high performers by their managers. And we believe in cultivating leaders and competencies. When an apprentice builds their skill, their craft, they build confidence, and that confidence develops courage to take risk and grow. Since 2016, we have over 167 apprentices that have graduated from our program, and our partner network continues to climb with over 90 employers that have hired our apprentices. Therefore, we represent a voice of people, and I'm here to encourage your intention to advance tech apprenticeships to support our apprentices like Jessica, who could not land a job after college graduation because employers rejected her applications due to no skills or competencies. She joined the apprenticeship, worked with a small business that laid off workers, but then she launched her career as an email marketing specialist with Black Rifle Coffee, a veteran-owned organization. And there, her salary, because of her work-based learning competencies and industry-recognized certifications, gave her the confidence and courage to be tenacious, not to mention she doubled her income. And I'm here for John, who sent over 1,000 resumes for over 6 months with no responses, no return phone calls or emails, and stood in front of one too many closed doors to land a job. John joined the apprenticeship, launched his career as a digital marketing specialist. He added value within his first 3 months to increase the awareness of his organization, driving traffic for developers, to build on a public-private development in San Antonio Southside with his employer, Brooks San Antonio. And I'm also here to ask for your support for Devon, Coco, Annette, who landed their careers with a fintech employer, Argo Insurance, as an email marketer, video content creator, and email project manager. Annette, a single mother, needed the flexibility to learn while she earned while taking care of her family. And as a side, our apprenticeship classes happen in the evenings. And I'm also here to ask for you to support Mark, Alex, Henry, and Joey. After they graduated college, they found that they weren't sure they wanted to pursue career, but what they found is to be an entrepreneur. And our coaching helped them build their courage and confidence to launch their business using their digital marketing competencies and skills. And I'm also here to ask for your support for the next generation of Texas apprentices to lead the state and the country, to demonstrate our tenacity as Texans, to have a significant impact on our talent, our career, and employers who seek lifelong learners to strengthen the Texas workforce. Okay, so now I leave you with a famous word of Sam Houston. A leader is someone who helps improve the lives of other people or improve the system they live under. Thank you for your listening and for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, let's move to comments from commissioners or questions for staff. Are there any questions or comments?
Chairman, I have some comments regarding agenda item number 9.
Great.
So first of all, I'd like to thank the public speaker, Aurora Geis, for providing comments for today's agenda item. And I also like to thank the commissioners for allowing me to bring forth this very important initiative. As I stated back in October 6th at our commission meeting, the Bureau of Labor Statistics anticipates continued job growth for individuals in the IT field. Employment in computer and information technology occupations is projected to grow 11% from 2019 to 2029, much faster than the average for all occupations. These occupations are projected to add about 531,200 new jobs, or what I like to say careers. Demand for these workers will stem from greater emphasis on cloud computing, the collection and storage of big data, and information security. LMCI's Help Wanted online web tool, which tracks employer demand for labor by occupations, industry, and geographic areas, indicates that between 2013 and 2020, software developers and computer occupations will remain one of the top 10 demanding occupations in all of workforce board areas. And IT skills touch all occupations, as we know. A 2019 report from the Markle Initiative found that 8 in 10 middle skilled jobs now require basic technology skills, and an estimated 77% of jobs now require the use of technology. And most experts agree that the pandemic has not slowed the demand for IT skills, but has accelerated the demand. This initiative supports not only upskilling workers, but supports employers by providing the needed IT skilled workforce. My hope, commissioners, is that you'll join me today in supporting this initiative by providing the use of $4 million of WIOA statewide funding to expand and develop IT registered apprenticeship. And just recently in our TWC's news clips, we had a Texas A&M University employed cybersecurity students as registered apprentices to monitor their computer systems for any types of fraud. So again, those are my comments for this particular initiative, and I would appreciate some consideration on the support on this initiative.
Other questions or comments?
Comments, Commissioner. First of all, Commissioner Alvarez, thank you for your continued work in this area, your leadership in this area. We watched it over the years and appreciate what you're doing there. Ms. Geis, thank you for what you do as well. This, I believe, will be an additional tool for employers down the line, and so it gives them an alternate route to a source for their future workforce and the like. And so I may have some other concerns centered around the motion, but full support of what's been presented and appreciate the work that's been done. And again, the tool for our Texas employers.
Great. I have some questions for staff. The first question is, what are the largest apprenticeship programs currently operating in the state?
That, sir, I would have to go back to our experts in the apprenticeship on that team and be back with you soon with that.
When you were working on this particular proposal, did you find any other fields that also had a need for internships?
We are aware of that possibly there is some room in the advanced manufacturing world also for apprenticeships there.
Did any specific companies express a need for this IT apprenticeship program?
Not to our knowledge, sir.
What kind of analysis did you do comparing the need for this apprenticeship carve out for the IT sector to some of the other fields that we've also been looking at?
Sir, in response to Commissioner Alvarez's request, just focus solely on the IT.
Do we know other IT sector apprenticeship programs that are operating currently?
That, sir, too, I would have to do some research on that and circle back with you.
Did you, as you were researching, did you uncover like so IT is a big field. What specific jobs would this apprenticeship really aid people in getting into their career faster on?
We are aware, sir, that this would greatly impact those interested in the programming, in cybersecurity, and especially in learning other computer programming languages.
I noticed that the money would be available to also buy tools for IT apprentices. What kinds of tools would that include?
That too, I would just have to venture a guess on that. So would like to follow back up with you on that, sir.
Okay. When would this money be available for these apprenticeships?
If we were to go through the RFA process, which we have proposed that we would do, we typically would begin drafting the RFA and hope to have that available within the next 6 months. Awards hopefully within the next 9 months.
I missed the last part of that, I'm sorry.
We would hope to be making awards within the next 9 months.
When was the last time we issued an RFA for apprenticeship programs, and what were the results from that RFA?
We recently issued an RFA using our DOL expansion funds that we receive. We published an RFA valued at roughly $4 million, received responses, and funded 6 of those applications that are now in operation.
Do you recall if any of those were IT firms?
I do not.
Yeah, I don't either. So, and also I read it as well.
Right.
How would this money that you're proposing today be different from the $10 million that we have available for this purpose but haven't yet spent?
The primary difference here would be that using these WIOA funds would allow a higher cost per than we normally allow on our expansion grant applications.
It would appear that this $4 million will exhaust all of our remaining WIOA funds for the year. How will this impact our ability to provide the services related to pandemic response and recovery that we're working on and might not know what we're going to need yet?
That I would have to defer to other staff, sir, but we will follow up with you.
Did you explore any other alternative sources of funding besides WIOA? I think there's about $5.5 million in the alternative funding program that's unspent. I haven't seen a report on the WIOA funds we obligated in April relative to pandemic response effort and whether or not any unspent funds remain in other WIOA projects that we might be able to use for this.
That as of working with Chris Nelson and confirming existing balance of the WIOA leadership funds, as of the end of October, we were a little over $4 million available on that. As far as other WIOA funds available, I'll defer to Courtney, who has just turned her camera on and can speak to this.
Chairman, if you can hear me okay, I was just going to mention that we have
Hey, Courtney,
a
can
number
you identify
of,
yourself for the record?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, Courtney Arbor, Workforce Director, Workforce Division. Thank you, Ed. Chairman, as you know, we have many grants to multiple organizations that are WIOA funded or other funding streams. And when there is the grant language requires expenditures and deliverable expectations. So if there is interest in staff taking a look at those grants to see what money can be recaptured, we are able to do that. I don't have a number for you immediately, but we do have a number of discretionary or statewide grants that are in place right now that we could take a look at for possible recapture if you'd like.
Is it also accurate? I'm showing that we have about $4.04 million available in WIOA funds right now. So this would essentially exhaust all but the last $85,000. Am I looking at the right number?
Yes, the available statewide balance for WIOA is just at 4.2 or 3, and this would put the majority of that into play in an RFA.
All right. Well, thank you both very much for indulging me on my questions. The apprenticeship programs, I think they're doing a lot of good in a lot of different fields. I have a couple of particular concerns about this proposal. First and foremost, and perhaps of more concern to me to anything else that I might talk about, is the timing of this and using all of our WIOA funds when I have some uneasiness about what we may call upon to help with relative to pandemic, particularly recovery efforts, and how WIOA funds have played prominently in our response to the pandemic issues that we've encountered with regard to workforce. Knowing that the funds aren't going to be spent for 6 to 9 months, I'm a little uncomfortable today committing the last of the money to something that is not going to happen for some time. Great program. Unfortunately, for me, since it's the last $4 million, it becomes a bit of a resource allocation concern for me. Still a great idea, still something that we need to do. I'm having a hard time, finding my way to commit the last $4 million when I'm uncertain about what the next couple of months bring in terms of other types of responses that we might need to fund from WIOA funds. And perhaps a secondary concern, and it would be not second on the list. I think my timing issue on the money is 1 through 10 on the list, so put this one at 11. It's committing to just the IT sector when we have $10 million available for additional apprenticeship programs that we could put sort of broadly. Committing some sum of money to IT at the expense of other fields, perhaps advanced manufacturing, is a little bit of concern to me, because I think there are a number of fields at which apprenticeships could be particularly useful. From your proposal, it doesn't seem clear to me that $4 million is pegged to anything other than that's about what we wanted to spend. It's a fair amount of money. I'm not particularly opposed to the dollar amount. It takes me back to my timing issue. I do harbor a bit of concern for just earmarking it specifically for the IT industry in the absence of having heard from some specific group of companies or a single company, and understanding what their particular needs are. I can overcome that concern, I think, pretty quickly. It's a much more difficult for me to overcome the timing concern. So that's sort of where I'm at on this. It's a great idea. Unfortunately, at least for me, it just may be at the wrong time. And so I'll put that out there for consideration and hope we can continue the discussion on this.
Chairman, if I may add, first of all, I asked if Desi Holmes would be available for remarks. So I agree with you on the amount. When you talk about in October 6th, we had met with staff, and back when we had that first discussion, there were $7 million in WIOA funding. And so that was the reasoning for me requesting 4. I'd be willing to shorten or compromise on the 4 million and go down to at least 2 million if that would be a consideration for you. But I will tell you that the $10 million that we have is already going to be committed to, or is it going to be used in other sectors? Just yesterday we met with and I'm not sure if Carrie knows this, but I've had multiple meetings with Desi, and I'm sure Desi keeps her informed, but we had a meeting yesterday with the Deaf Chamber of Commerce, the only one in the country that's going to put together a solar panel and another type of apprenticeship program that they're working on. They've been working on this since 2016. We all had an opportunity to meet with Amazon Web Services at the state conference where they were talking about these IT apprentices that they wanted to move forward. We all had that discussion with them. We've talked to FANUC, the people that are going to be putting the robotics at Tesla. We've talked to Tesla. We've talked to IBM. We've talked to many of these companies that are very interested in this apprenticeship program. Matter of fact, we just talked to some legislators yesterday that are going to put that as an agenda item as a priority for next session. I'd be willing to compromise instead of the 4 million, since I hear that we only have 4. 2 weeks ago, when we had this discussion, I was informed by staff that we had 7. And so I'd be willing to compromise on that. But please keep in mind that other states in the country do use the WIOA funding to train IT apprentices in cybersecurity. And as I just referenced, Texas A&M is working with students and have an IT apprenticeship cybersecurity program within College Station. I'd be willing to work with 2 million on this. I think it's a great initiative. As you heard in my remarks, there's a huge demand for it. We've been talking about this for some time now. I think it's appropriate for us to move forward on this, especially when we're transitioning individuals that have been laid off of work or been furloughed, people that were in the restaurant business and hospitality and the music business. These people are all now looking at the certifications that's in the tri-agency to pick up a skill that's going to get them fully engaged in employment with benefits. Again, Argo Insurance Company, we've talked to many folks. We did the boot tour, and some of the companies that we visited with indicated to us that IT is in every field or every occupation. It's even in the IBC list for TEA. So we're helping build those stackable credentials. We're listening to industry, and like I said, we had numerous talks yesterday on, even with the University of Texas RGV, where they're looking at putting together a campus very similar to RELIS that A&M has. So again, I'd be willing to negotiate on this. It gives us more flexibility. If we use any type of other funding, we've not only met our measures, we've exceeded them. And so we have a pretty good reputation around the country. I think this elevates what we're doing in Texas. And again, I would consider for you to maybe work with the other commissioners or work with me on the amount awarded, 2 million, and I'd be willing to work with that.
Commissioner, I think in sort of the interest of getting this right, I would be more comfortable letting staff explore these alternative sources of WIOA money, getting a better handle on that. Certainly we can use a lower amount, but I'd like to give staff a few days here to try to find some additional WIOA money from some other areas that might be reprogrammed within the agency. If we could bring this back next week, that would be my preference. If we need to do something today, I understand that as well. My preference would be to bring this back next week and get some answers to the money questions, because honestly, that's primarily my concern right now at this moment.
Commissioner, Chairman, I think two things for me. Number one, I'm glad to hear Commissioner Alvarez speak to the lowering of the amount. That was number one on my list, maybe moving it from 4 to 2 or something along those lines. The questions that you've raised are questions that need to be addressed. I think if it doesn't do anything with this from a week standpoint, I think we have a stronger proposal to get the answers to those questions, and we're in a position to move forward. But I think it's a real good initiative, but definitely I don't want to wipe out the entire $4 million with one initiative. And then you've raised some pretty good questions that we probably want to have the answers to, and we may find another bucket that may be out there that exists that we can take care of this thing, and I think that's worth exploring.
Given that it's a 6 to 9 month window, I think we can take a week. Commissioner Alvarez, if that's a non-starter for you, let's discuss that.
Well, we have been working on this for some time. I mean, a week would be good. I know Carrie's had ample time to work on this. She's worked with Desi. We've been working on this for months. I'd be okay with that. We've been listening to folks. I think people are excited. Carrie, we're about to roll out the 10 million as well. I mean, you know, I don't know what to say. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Next week is National Apprenticeship Week. This would have been a great time to roll this out, but I understand the concerns of the other two commissioners.
I sincerely appreciate that. Let's bring this back. It's been moved in segments, so it's very much a live item. Let's bring this back at the next available commission meeting. And I would ask staff to answer the questions I've asked that you needed to do additional consultation on. I understand that. I appreciate that. Other questions that other commissioners may have asked with the intent that when we bring this back up at the next available commission meeting, that we will render some kind of final decision on this at that time. I don't want to stretch it out any longer than we have to.
I know if the speaker's still on, if she wants to add anything to it, I don't know if it's appropriate for us to do it at this time, but I leave that up to the chairman.
Typically, we would not do that. I suppose if there are additional questions or comments from commissioners, we can definitely do that at this time.
Chairman, I think it's been laid out, the questions that you raised, my situation around the money. I don't want to wipe out the entire $4 million. Commissioner Alvarez has talked about lowering that, but I think if staff can just get on those questions, then we're in a position to move forward pretty quick. And I think next week will allow us to do that. Questions have been laid out. We need to get answers to those questions, show what we're doing with the 10 million so that all minds are clear from that standpoint, and we're in a position to move forward quickly, I think.
Thank you. Commissioners, the hard work is often getting this just right and how it aligns with the other programs. And I appreciate everyone's willingness to spend some due diligence on making sure that we're doing just that. If there's nothing else on that item, we should move on to the next item and bring this one back at the next available commission meeting.
We're happy to do that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move to item 10, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding potential strategic priorities for Texas's federal fiscal years 2022 and 2024 Childcare and Development Fund State Plan.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, and Mr. Cerna. For the record, Allison Wilson with the Childcare and Early Learning Division. The Childcare and Development Block Grant requires states to submit a Childcare and Development Fund State Plan every 3 years. While much of the CCDF state plan reflects the state's existing structure and policies for the administration of CCDF, states also use the state plan to outline overarching goals for the upcoming 3 years. As staff develops the draft state plan, we want to provide some possible strategic priorities that the commission may consider and solicit feedback to determine if there are common priorities and needs that stakeholders identify. This discussion paper outlines these potential priorities, many of which align with the tri-agency's strategies to increase kindergarten readiness and with the 2020 through 2025 Texas Early Learning Strategic Plan. Staff seeks direction on including these potential strategic priorities that are outlined in the paper in discussions with stakeholders as the draft plan is developed. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any comments or questions?
None here, Chairman.
None.
Do we have any, do we have a motion on this item?
I move that we include the strategic priorities as discussed by staff in the development of the CCDF state plan for fiscal years 2022 and 2024.
Second.
It's been moved second. We're unanimous on this item. Let's move to item 11, discussion, consideration, possible action regarding individuals' request to waive the child care services rules under 40 Texas Administrative Code 809.3A regarding Texas Rising Star minimum education requirements in 40 Texas Administrative Code 809.134.
Okay. Again, Allison Wilson with Childcare and Early Learning. TWC's Childcare Rules, Section 809.3, allow any person directly impacted by the rules to request the commission waive its rules. A Texas Rising Star assessor has submitted a request to waive the childcare rules under this provision. Specifically, this individual has requested that the commission waive 809.134, which establishes the minimum education requirements for Texas Rising Star staff. In the individual's letter to the commission, she notes that she is submitting this request so she may maintain her position as a Texas Rising Star assessor while continuing to work toward the completion of her bachelor's degree in early childhood education. When this individual was hired, she did not meet the minimum education requirements. Our rules allow for a limited extension period to allow a mentor or assessor to reach the required educational levels. In 2018, this individual was provided the maximum 2-year extension. The requester notes that during this 2-year period, she has completed 1 college course. The requester also notes extenuating personal circumstances that have affected her ability to complete her degree. However, in light of the very minimal hours the individual has earned over her 2-year extension and the significant number of hours that are still needed in order for her to attain her degree and meet the Texas Rising Star staff qualifications, staff recommends that the commission deny this individual's request to waive Rule 809.134. And that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
None here, Chairman.
None.
Do we have a motion on this item?
I move that we deny the individual's request under 40 TAC 809.3 to waive the education requirements required by under 40 TAC 809.134.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We're unanimous on this issue. Agenda item 12, staff does not have anything to present for agenda item 12, statewide initiatives. Agenda item 13, discussion, consideration, possible action regarding guidance on resource utilization, implementation of services, strategies, target disaster relief efforts, and public health emergencies, including those funded with the Department of Labor's dislocated worker grant. I'm not showing anything under agenda item 13. Mr. Sarna, do we have anything under this item?
We should have one item, one update from Clay Cole on UI.
Good morning, Chairman Daniel, Commissioner Alvarez, Commissioner Demerson, Mr. Cerna. For the record, Clay Cole, Unemployment Insurance Division. Just wanted to give you an update on the latest UI statistics, high-level update, and also a couple other things going on I wanted to share. To date, during COVID-19 period, we processed over 5.3 million claims and paid over $33.8 billion in unemployment benefits, while closing over 7.4 million assignments and handling over 7.3 million calls. Teams continue improvements with overall call handling through training and increased resources, which is allowing us to handle more calls daily compared to unique callers. And we've made great progress with working through our assignment inventory. We continue to lower our overall assignment inventory as we prepare for the increases we're expecting by reinstating work search. As you know, work search reinstatement happened over the weekend. Sunday, we reinstated work search for the majority of the counties in Texas. In addition to all the messaging over the past 3 to 4 weeks, we also began directly notifying customers yesterday of changes for those individuals that requested payment or filed new claims on Sunday. Individuals are notified of their work search requirement at the time they file a new claim or request payment bi-weekly. Depending on when that occurs, will determine when the customers are required to begin reporting work searches. For example, a customer who requested payment Sunday, November 1st, will be required to start searching for work the week beginning November 15th, 2020, which then they'll report those work searches when they request payment on November 29th, 2020. Just want to thank the UI, IT, workforce, external relations teams for all the great contributions in reinstating work search requirements. And I want to thank them as they continue to work on messaging and updates to finalize things as we go forward. We're just starting that process, as you know. And finally, with the increases in identity theft and fraud schemes, the Texas Workforce Commission is partnering with ID.me Online Identity Network to further verify claimants' personal information and help further protect them from unemployment benefits fraud. ID.me is a federally certified identity network that allows claimants to protect and authenticate their identity when they interact with TWC. ID.me's identity verification solution is certified at the federal government's highest level of standards for online identity proof and authentication without compromising their personal identifiable information. TWC has executed a contract with ID.me and issued a purchase order today. Teams are working on the IT development and communication strategies for implementing the new ID verification solution in the coming weeks, which we are really excited about and we'll be providing you more information on. And this concludes my updates, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
Okay, Clay, you guys keep up the good work. Keep going.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Anything else under item 13?
No, sir, that's all we had.
Thank you very much. Let's move to agenda item 14, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding approval of local workforce development board nominees.
Good morning, Chairman Daniel, Commissioner Alvarez, Commissioner Demerson, and Mr. Serna. For the record, Shanta Williams with the Workforce Development Division. And before you for consideration, we have workforce board nominees for Workforce Solutions Borderplex, Northeast Texas, Rural Capital Area, and Texoma. This concludes my request, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Any comments or questions?
None here, Chairman.
None.
Do we have a motion on this issue?
I move to approve the board nominees for Borderplex, Northeast Texas, Rural Capital Area, and Texoma.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We're unanimous on this issue. Nothing on agenda item 15, legislative proposals. Do we have a legislative report today?
No, sir, we do not.
All right. How about an executive director's report?
No, sir, again. No report.
Yeah, efficiency. All right. Thank you very much. Is there any other order of business come before the commission?
No, sir.
I'd like to say something before we end today's commission meeting.
Please.
I just wanted to acknowledge we lost two great people this past week. We lost John Patrick, who was the AFL-CIO past president of the Texas chapter. So I'm very sorry to hear of his loss. And this past week, I got a call from Carl Sherman that we lost Mayor McCowan from DeSoto. And so I'm sorry to hear about the loss of the mayor of DeSoto, who did so many great things for that city, that community, and that college. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share those remarks.
Thank you for bringing that forward. Any other items of business? We have a motion to adjourn.
Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. We're adjourned. We're going to reconvene in a work session. Mr. Cerna, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. You'll get an update on performance.
So we'll close out of this call and rejoin on a different Zoom call. Is that correct procedure?
Yes, sir.
That is not correct. Actually, it's the same link.
Okay.
We'll just stay, because we didn't want you guys to have to log off and log back on. So just
stay on here.
Recess for a little bit.
We're going to recess for 5 minutes and we'll be back.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
and will just stand.
And back.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Okay. As soon as Commissioner Demerson reappears on his screen, there he is. Let's call this work session to order. Mr. Cerna, how do you want to tackle what we have here?
Go ahead and start with system performance first with Mariana Vega and an LMCI update.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, Chair Daniel, Commissioners, Mr. Ed Cerna. Just for the record, my name is Mariana Vega. I'm the Director for the Labor Market and Career Information Department, and I will be providing some labor market updates this morning. So I am going to share PowerPoint with you. Just give me 1 second to get that going. And can everybody see that right now?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and start with the local area unemployment statistics part, which is mostly the unemployment rate. So as everyone knows, the Texas seasonally adjusted unemployment rate did increase by 1.5 percentage points to 8.3% in September. The US rate did fall 0.5 percentage point to 7.9% over the month. Both the labor force participation rate and the employment population ratio did decrease. The labor force participation rate declined from 64.4% to 63.6%. We also saw the number of employed decrease almost twice as much as the unemployed increase, which points to discouraged workers. The labor force did shrink, and the remaining unemployed were a larger share of the workforce. The next slide, we'll be taking a look at a little closer look at the civilian labor force. And so although the civilian labor force did decline over the month, it rose over the year by 0.6% over the year. As far as for the US civilian labor force, it declined both over the month and over the year. And so as we take a look at the data visualization to the right, here we're analyzing unemployment among Texas MSAs. So we are looking at not seasonally adjusted data, and the blue references growth and the orange references decline. So over half of the MSAs did experience increases to their labor forces. 3 of the 4 largest MSAs experienced 5-digit increases. This was Houston, Dallas, and the Austin area MSAs. The Midland MSA was the area that experienced the largest drop over the year in the civilian labor force, with a drop of 5,583. So the last visualization to the right is a distribution chart. And just in terms of absolute values, most of the changes in the labor force were between 5,500 and 8,000. And so moving on to employment. So after a revised over the month increase of 111,900 jobs gained in August, employment did grow at a slower pace in September, with 40,700 jobs added. All 11 major industry sectors added jobs over the month, except for trade, transportation, and utilities, financial activities, and other services. We did have leisure and hospitality account for over half of the employment gain. It added 23,600 jobs in September, and this was mostly due to restaurants and bars reopening and expanding their business hours. Over the year losses did occur in all industries. Despite this, I can say that employment in Texas has grown over 660,000 jobs since April of this year. Over the years, since last September, Texas has lost 583,600 jobs, and this is mostly in the private sector. In this next slide, we graphed both government and private sector employment. So as I mentioned, the government sector's employment has slowed a bit. It went from 2.2% over the month growth in July down to 0.3% in September. Private sector employment has been positive for 4 of the last 5 months, but it has also tapered off. The private sector added 35,300 jobs in September, and this was after a gain of 81,500 jobs in August. Government added 5,400 in September. State government added 17,100 jobs, but we did see a decrease of 13,000 jobs in local government. So there was a decline in public education jobs at local schools and state colleges. Most have adopted forms of online learning, which has caused some disruption in those type of jobs. Additionally, census jobs have also tapered off. Here in this slide, we're just taking a closer look at industries. So trade, transportation, and utilities, and leisure and hospitality employment. Trade, transportation, and utilities lost 1,100 jobs over the month in September. In April, the industry, or since April, the industry has had 3 positive months of employment gains for a total addition of 84,000 jobs during this time. The gain in employment was mostly due to retail trade, which has added 85,600 jobs since April. Trade, transportation, and utilities has added over 10,000 jobs, but we are seeing some job loss in wholesale trade. It has lost 12,500 jobs since April. To the right, leisure and hospitality has rebounded significantly. In May and June, this industry added 331,400 jobs. Growth has slowed since then. In the 3 months since June, this particular industry has added 3,100 jobs. Much of the growth in the industry is due to accommodation and food services, but it's also the area that felt most of the brunt of the job losses caused by the pandemic. Here we see Texas and US employment indexed to pre-COVID peaks. And so the employment is indexed to February 2020. It was during this time we did see employment peaks both in the US and Texas. Texas during this time had over 13 million jobs. So both Texas and the US saw steep employment declines through April, when Texas fell to 89.2% of its February peak and the US fell to 85.5%. We are seeing some recovery. Since April, both have risen each month in total employment. Texas has reached 94.2% of the pre-COVID peak, and the US has reached 93%. And we're looking at September, which is what we released last month. Taking a look at West Texas Intermediate crude oil and rig counts. The monthly average rig counts in Texas have reached its lowest point in August of this year. There was a slight increase in September. The September average was 108 rigs. The monthly average for October, we're looking at 122 active rigs. And that's not shown since we are keeping everything or trying to keep everything showing September numbers. As far as the price, it did reach a low average monthly price over the last 10 years in April 2020 of $16.55. The West Texas Intermediate monthly spot price did reach $38.31 in June, and it has held around this price through September. And in what we're seeing as far as the weekly and daily price postings, this is also holding true for October. Here we see Texas layoffs, and what this chart is just showing is the occupations in Texas that have experienced the most layoffs. This data is collected through the current population survey conducted by Census. So the number of layoffs occurring during September 2020 is down 22.5% from the previous month. There were 311,944 layoffs in September, which was the least number of layoffs over the month since peaking in April 2020, when there were over 1 million layoffs. Waiters and waitresses do continue to have the most cumulative layoffs of all jobs, and they have been among the top 10 layoffs by occupation each month since April 2020. So even though they are among the top 10 cumulative layoffs beginning in March, school drivers or school bus drivers, retail salespeople, they did not report any unemployment due to layoffs in September. So that's a good sign as far as for those occupations. And here we're taking a look at job postings just because this does show us what currently is in demand. The H-Wall index did increase 4.9 percentage points over the month. And what this index does is just follow online job ads over time. In September, there were 195,385 new job postings, and this is seasonally adjusted. And what we've seen is that weekly new job postings have been at or above around 47,000 for the last 2 weeks. Compared to last year, it's up 2,000. Last year, we were seeing an average of 45,000 postings a week. These are your top occupations by job postings. So we see registered nurses up there. It does continue to be a top advertised job listing. The overall 3 categories that show the most listings are sales and related type occupations, office and administrative support occupations, and management occupations. Here we see your top detailed industries. Healthcare and social assistance does hold 21.9% of all postings, or it did over the last month. Your top 3 industries for job postings are healthcare and social assistance, retail trade, and accommodation and food services. And just to summarize a few points that were made throughout this PowerPoint presentation, total non-farm employment did rise for the 5th consecutive month after a loss of 1.3 million jobs in April. We did have 2 historic increases averaging 240,000 jobs in April and May. We are seeing that job growth has slowed. In September, we added 40,700 jobs. That's down from the 111,900 jobs that we added in August. All major industries did lose jobs over the year. But in percentage terms, financial activities, government, and professional and business services were the industries that were least affected by the downturn. This could be due to the fact that, we have low interest rates. So we have a really strong housing demand. And those industries have been more flexible and have allowed for more telecommuting options for their staff. As far as jobs over the year, Texas did do better than a lot of other states. Texas posted a 4.5% decrease in employment over the year. It ranked 16 among all the states percentage-wise. After 4 consecutive months of decline, the unemployment rate did increase to 8.3% in September. We were at a series high of 13.5% in April 2020. We did see the civilian labor force decrease by 171,800 people over the month. The employed fell by 375,500, while the unemployed did rise by 203,700. And just lastly, we do follow the number of COVID cases reported daily and weekly. According to the Texas Health and Human Services, they are on the rise. There was an average of about 1,300 cases, daily cases in September 27th. We saw that number increase to 6,400 cases in October 29th. So, as far as what happens going forward, it is largely dependent on what happens with COVID. So we're just going to keep an eye on that as well. Our next release is November 20th. That's when we're going to release October data. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Any comments or questions?
I'm here.
Chairman, Mariana, down the line, I'd like to look at how we compare with other states. I think you talked about that a little bit, and so I may get with you on Texas's unemployment rate and how that looks with other states as well, and some of the things that we talk about, just to see what our other states are doing, and if they're doing better. In some cases, we can ask the question, what are they doing, or if there's anything that we can glean from them, we'll look at that. And then one other thing, and this may not be in your wheelhouse, but Ed, kind of interested in future plans type survey. If we're looking at companies, employers out there in Texas, what are the sentiments of the CEOs, the companies? Are they going to have folks back in the buildings, back downtown, those kind of things? And I don't know where we get that type of information, but that's something of interest. And it may be one of those situations where if the pandemic gets better or it's worse or whatever, what are some of the plans? Because I know there's some forward thinking that some executives have already taken in regards to their staff either coming back or not coming back along those lines. But I don't know if there's anything out there where we're kind of gauging the interest of those employers from the standpoint of their next moves as relates to the real estate that each of them have. And so any thoughts on that, not for this meeting, but that kind of, if you know any organizations that might have that kind of data, and if not, it's something that I'm interested in. And I haven't figured out where I would get that from just yet, but that's something of interest, because that tells the story in big ways. Even here in Austin, if folks are coming back, it allows other employers to kind of figure out their game plans one way or the other. And if they're not, it also allows them to figure out their game plan one way or the other.
Definitely. And I know there's a lot of interest in that topic right now. I know of one particular survey that's being conducted by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It's a business survey where they're reaching out to employers to see how they are being affected by the pandemic, what's going on, what the plans are. I will need to follow up with my BLS contacts to give you an update on that. I know we were contacted by them earlier this year as far as working with them, as far as, for contact information for these employers. So I know that's definitely in the works. I'm not sure when the actual results are going to be released. Obviously, they would be really, really helpful to have earlier, later. So I will provide an update on that.
Thank you, Mariana. Appreciate it.
Definitely.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Mariana.
Thank you.
I think we have Adam Leonard next with a performance update. And that'll be the last update that we have, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today I'm here to present information regarding our fiscal year 20 year-end performance. As you know, we typically go through this almost measure by measure, talking about the different factors that may be influencing some of the results that we're seeing. However, this year, there's really kind of one overdriving factor in terms of our numbers. I'm going to share kind of my talking points to really try to show you. Well, I'm not going to share, it's not going to let me, but I had sent out yesterday a page that talked about kind of some of our primary service level based measures. So things like the numbers of participants being served in the various programs, what was happening in UI, hold time, et cetera. And so if you kind of think about the measures of demand, if you will, what you really see is that going from fiscal year 19 to the rolling 12 months through February, which of course was kind of the last normal month we had, the numbers are pretty similar. That is the way we ended fiscal 19, and the 12 months, March of 19 through February of 20, were really similar for the most part. Yeah, there were some slight adjustments up or down, but on the whole, it looked really, really similar. Then you get to fiscal 20 year end, and suddenly everything changes pretty dramatically. And so we end up with quite a few measures running well below target, where high is good and low is not. And we end up well above target in areas where high is bad. So for instance, high is good is when you're talking about the number of participants you're serving in different programs, number of kids in care, that kind of thing. And then high is bad would be things like wait time or the number of claims being filed, which of course is more of a broader economic indicator, particularly now. So really though, when you look at the numbers, I think that it pretty starkly indicates exactly what happened from basically March forward through the end of the year. These measures don't have lag in them, meaning that we're able to report them essentially the month after they occur. But there are other measures that we met for fiscal 20
that are likely going to be impacted for fiscal 21 because there is lag. So essentially, for many of our outcome measures, the fiscal 20 exiters are going to be the people who are included in fiscal 21 performance. So a lot of the people who are kind of basically exiting in the midst of the pandemic, or whose measurement period, maybe they exited before the pandemic and then their measurement period for the outcome was in the pandemic, we're going to see some reductions in performance there. And we, of course, I believe talked about that when we were briefing on our LAR approach, that we looked at trying to account for some reductions in outcomes in future years. So I do want to emphasize, though, that while our numbers of people served are lower, it's not entirely, doesn't mean that we haven't been serving people. We obviously moved to remote operations, both central office and most board areas. They were offering services remotely, but there was certainly going to be a transition period there as people kind of got used to doing something on an exception basis and making it a primary part of what they did. Also, there were a couple other factors in there, such as the in our SNAP and TANF choices programs and serving those folks, HHSC has waived their participation requirements, which basically means that they're getting benefits and are not being told that they need to participate with the workforce system on work activities. And so without that, that kind of drives down the number of people who might be served there. It doesn't mean that we can't outreach or serve some of these folks. It just means that there's a little bit less pressure to do so because there's not a messaging that says, okay, you've qualified for benefits, but now you need to go work with your local workforce center to try to improve your employability and get you a job. So there's a certain amount of things that were happening out there. In addition, I think that if you think about when the pandemic occurred in the year, which is to say a little over halfway through the year, this was an unprecedented event. None of us alive have seen this before, at least not as adults. The economic data and such that was available back in 1918 is not really comparable. We can't go back and look at that and kind of figure out what impacts those are going to have on service delivery. So this is not like the Great Recession. This is being driven, more by what happened with the virus. Now, obviously, the reason I'm mentioning that is that I think that we're going to probably see a greater impact on performance in 20 than in 21 on some of these service level measures. And some of that has to do with the fact that the period of adjustment will be over for kind of our operations, because we will have been doing this for 6+ months. We also will be seeing, with work search turned back on effective this week, that now we're probably going to be seeing increased demand from UI claimants and people looking for additional assistance finding work. And so I would tend to think that our participant serve numbers will go up in those areas. And in addition, I think that one of the things we saw during the Great Recession was that early on, economic activity in terms of hiring and things like that really fell off, even though the unemployment rate was stable, right? So it went from 4.5% to 8% or whatnot. And during that period, everybody was very uncertain about, well, what are the implications for my business? Can I afford to fill this vacancy I have? What should I do? They didn't know. Then after a little while, they knew, right? The unemployment rate stayed at close to 8% for several years, but hiring picked up, return to work improved. And the reason is because employers got a sense of what their operations would look like during that type of an economy. And I would guess that we'll see similar things going forward here. Yes, there may be more unpredictability or more volatility as we see, increases and decreases in COVID-related diagnoses. But on the whole, people tend to loosen up a little bit and once they start to understand the environment that they're working in, once they have some information to make decisions on. On page 2 of the material that I had shared, I wanted to talk about the again, that you can really kind of see the fall off in the number of people being served. So this table in the middle of page 2 talks about the number of Wagner-Pizer participants being served and the number of employers being served by month from July of 19 through September of 20. In the case of employers, I don't have September of 20 for Wagner-Pizer yet. But on the whole, we had a little bit of a period of adjustment in terms of serving people with the new work in Texas system that went online in August. There was a learning curve for staff to kind of understand how to record things. And so the first few months they were depressed, but as you can see, when you get to January, February, March, we were back, or January and February in particular, we were back at around 50,000 people being served per month on average. And then that started to fall off as we got to March, where it went to 43,000, April, when it went to 36,000. And then more recently, though, June, July, we started seeing those numbers coming back up again, closer to 50,000, although August was about 45,000. But one of the things that we realized when we were looking at this data is that most of our measures are tied to federal constructs, by which I mean the concept of who a participant is based on federal definitions in WIOA. And we realized that that's not telling the full story of service in our system, because of course, the reason that we spent money on a new work in Texas system was to provide job seekers with better tools for self-service, right? And so if we look at towards the bottom of page 2, I've laid out the number of participants served versus reportable individuals from July of 18 through June of 19, and then July of 19 through June of 20. And as you can see here, the number of participants dropped from 573,000 and change in the period ending June 19 to about 411,500 people in the period ending June of 20. But the number of reportable individuals went up considerably. It went up from 383,000 to 1.1 million. And so the total number of job seekers who were interacting with the system and being served either through self-service or through staff assistance, which does include remote services, increased from 957,000 to 1.5 million. And again, I would tend to think that those numbers could very well go up here as we see the claimants who hadn't been subject to work search now being subject to work search and engaging with the system and using the tools that are available. So that's kind of the big picture of what we saw in terms of our impact, our performance measures. When it comes to our federal reporting, because most of those are exit-based and outcome-based, we did fairly well on those. And for our measures that we report to the legislature and the governor's office that we typically refer to as the LBB measures, because it's their IT system that we use, we did considerably worse than we've done in the past. And this is largely driven by the fact that we have so many measures that are numbers served and average cost per person served and that kind of thing. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about either the material I've covered or the material that was provided in the notebook, which is the normal monthly reports.
Any questions or comments?
I want to say great report, Adam. This is very helpful, so thank you for that. And explain it in a way where I can understand it.
Well, it's incumbent on the speaker to ensure communication is effective, right? So we've always tried to make sure that what we're putting together is better than what we put together last time.
Thank you for the report.
No questions here.
All right, then thank you. And I'll see you at a future meeting on various target-related issues.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Cerna.
There it is. Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button, sir. That is the last performance presentation that we had.
All right. Any other items of business come before this commission meeting?
No, sir.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Alvarez.
I think he's got sound problems. Perhaps Commissioner Demerson, you need to.
I move that we adjourn. Commissioner Alvarez, you going to second that motion?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can't, your audio's distorted on our end. We can't understand what you're saying.
I'll second it.
Okay. I believe he said he would second. It's been seconded to adjourn. I'm in agreement and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.